Shohei Ohtani makes his debut in 2025 MLB spring training and hits a home run in his very first at-bat. We also get some injury news on the New York Yankees, what's going on with one of their best starting pitchers, Luis Gil, after he had to shut down his throwing session earlier today. We'll let you know how long he is expected to be out and much, much more ahead next here at The Upside. And welcome into the MLB Hot Stove Daily here at the Upside Sports Network. My name is Michael. Appreciate you guys joining us this evening. We do get some updates that are actually on the field. Shohei Ohtani does indeed hit that home run in his very first at-bat, popped out to second base in his second one, but it's good to see him back on the field. And that's really what you want to see in spring training is just guys getting in their work. You're not too worried about the results or anything like that, but seeing some positive continuations from last season is always a good sign. That goes the same for Matt Olson as well, who had a really nice finish to the year last year and has continued that again today with a home run in spring training as well. So off to some hot starts there in the spring. On the downside, though, you also have to worry about injuries. And we've talked a lot about the New York Mets and the injuries in their pitching staff. Montas likely going to miss the entirety of April and most of May. Manaea likely to miss the entirety of April and maybe a bit of May. They need to bring in some starting pitching, and they brought in Jose Urena to at least give them some depth to begin the year. Now, there are still some nice free agent starting pitchers still out there. Jose Quintana, Lance Lynn, Kyle Gibson, among a few other names that you could bring in, but we'll see who ultimately brings them in. Top guy on the relief market, probably David Robertson still. I think he'd be a nice get for somebody as we get closer and closer to opening day. But the big injury news of the day comes from the New York Yankees. Their young starting pitcher, possible future ace Luis Gil had to shut down his bullpen session today with the New York Yankees with tightness in his upper arm shoulder area. Aaron Boone was asked about it later on in the afternoon as far as his status, and it sounds like he could miss some time. Those are the exact words according to Aaron Boone. Now, for me, they already have a very strong rotation. They, of course, have the insurance policy in Marcus Stroman sitting there. So I think the injury here for Gil likely means Stroman might break that rotation to start the year, and we'll have to see how productive he is early in the season. I think it's both good and bad they didn't move on from him already. One, it's bad because they could have used that money to spend elsewhere in free agency, bring in another bat at the corner infield spot, maybe a second baseman, somewhere along those lines. Instead, they chose to hold on to him because they couldn't find a taker, obviously, to eat the money there. But also, he does give them a really nice insurance policy if one of their pitchers does go down to injury, like Luis Gil has done today. So I still would have gone about the way of trading away Marcus Stroman, with a couple of prospects, get a nice bat in there, and then gone about things a little bit cheaper, like a Jose Urena, the way the Mets did, to bring in some starting pitching. Maybe even right now you could go into free agent market and bring in a guy like Lance Lynn or a Kyle Gibson on a prove-it type of a deal with heavily, a lot of incentives in that deal that if he hits certain benchmarks, he gets more money. But that'd be the way I would have chosen to go about it. But they chose to go about it a little bit differently. I'm curious to see what the Yankees are going to do long term here if the injury does prove to be a little bit more damaging than originally expected. But right now it's still very early in the process, so we'll have to see how he really responds to getting that rest that he needs. Welcome in Rafe, Holly, Master Vinman. Welcome back, Steven. Appreciate you joining us once again. Michael, my Cubs are undefeated, dare I say World Series champs in 25. I would say it's spring training. To me, it matters about as much as the NFL preseason, which is to say not at all. I think there's a few teams that have lost 4 or 5 straight years of every single preseason game. Meanwhile, is it the Chicago Bears who have been undefeated in preseason football for like the last 5 years as well? Take it with a big grain of salt, I will say that. Steven, good thing you didn't review the Yankees yet. True. We will have that one coming up tomorrow evening, so be sure to join us for that one. Rafe, my computer makes me mad. Can get so hot I could get third-degree burns. The fans won't kick on, but when they finally do kick on, I have to restart it, so just actually work without lagging. That's a rough one, Rafe. Sounds like you might need to replace the fan or something along those lines. But hopefully you can get that figured out. But we appreciate you joining us nonetheless. All right, let's get into a few other headlines that I wanted to get into before we touch on the Cleveland Guardians 2025 season preview. We had talked about the Shohei Ohtani home run. Matt Olson hit the home run as well, continuing his torrid finish to the 2024 season. And I just want to point out all the youth that's in Major League Baseball right now. Jackson Merrill, Rookie of the Year on the NL side, was bumped up to the 3-hole in spring training lineup today as San Diego kind of trotted out their first lineup this spring training season that we've really gotten a really good chance or really good look as to how this lineup is really going to stack up. So it looks like they're going to try to put Merrill in the top half of that lineup. Sounds like he'll be their number 3 hitter this year, very likely, but we shall see. And then, of course, Jackson Holliday, a very aggressive base runner in spring training, has been thrown out a fair amount, but also launched a 2-run homer. He's going to have a fantastic year. I think he's going to take the American League by storm this year as well. Welcome in, Hank. Appreciate you joining us once again. Rafe, I mean, it's a fairly new computer that was over 1K. Yikes. I think it's just bad manufacturing design. That's a rough one, Rafe. I hope it works out for you, though, my friend. I hope it works for you. All right, as far as the other headline I wanted to get to is the Philadelphia Phillies and Kyle Schwarber have at least broached the subject of what an extension might look like. Now, of course, the Phillies are very, very much strapped for cash right now. That's why they had to go out there and spend very little in free agency. They brought in Max Kepler to kind of solidify their outfield mix, brought in Jesus Luzardo, and that's basically the extent of what they did this offseason. I think they should have done more. I would not have made the move for Jesus Luzardo, excuse me, but here we are. We'll see how this thing goes. I think, the Phillies, trying to bring back Kyle Schwarber, I think this is just trying to keep the Philly fans happy that they might keep one of their guys that's really become integral to the part of this team. But, Schwarber's best days are certainly behind him. He's still a very good power bat. He certainly can get on base, but is he as nearly as good as he once was? No. And as far as the extension goes, say he does want to get an extension and takes a team-friendly deal with Philadelphia. We're talking a deal that's paying him significantly less than what he's getting now, because right now Philadelphia does not have the financial flexibility to really do much of anything. So while I'm sure both sides are at least talking about the idea of an extension, I'm not sure how realistic that really is for the Philadelphia Phillies going forward. I just think Schwarber is probably best suited going somewhere else in free agency and allowing the Phillies to spend that money and use to get another better defender out there in left field, maybe spend it on a couple of relievers. That's another option as well. But again, this is a team that does not have much financial flexibility, and that, I think, is the biggest impetus for them to be willing to allow him to leave in free agency, just to give them some wiggle room to where they can make some additions in the offseason or at the trade deadline of any given year, because right now they're so cash strapped right now they can't do much of anything. So I think this is more lip service more than anything else from the Philadelphia front office. But as far as the Kyle Schwarber contingent, I'm sure he would love to sign a long-term deal or at least an extension of some kind there in Philadelphia and keep making the kind of money he's making right now. He's making some good coin with them as well. Alrighty, restart the computer. Masterman, come on, it was a joke. I'm a little more realistic than the Cubs fans. True. I hear you, Masterman, man. I'm just saying that preseasons can be a little bit misleading for those of us in the chat that don't understand when you're joking. But I think most of us here understand that the Cubs, while they certainly have improved by having a higher-end talent in their lineup overall isn't quite as deep as it once was last year, and that to me was already a weakness on this club. Their bullpen is significantly better and could continue to make some additions there. And then, of course, they're still looking big game hunting as far as another starting pitcher. Dylan Cease is one of the names they've been connected with. So I'm not saying the Cubs are not going to win. I'm just saying that, for those of us who are relatively new to baseball that don't follow this thing very closely, don't take the results that you see in spring training with as the end-all, be-all of what's going to happen in the 2025 season. I know we got a lot of young fans with us that are just relatively new to understanding how the game of baseball works. I know we've got a few of the guys in the chat anyway, but I do want to say to those of you looking at the 2025 spring training and just saying, hey, Matt Olson, Shohei Ohtani, these are the best players in the game. That means they're going to have a great 2025, right? Well, I mean, it's just guys working on some things. So, again, don't take any of the performance that you see as fact or Bible or church for what's going to happen next or this upcoming season. Donnie, welcome in. Rafe, let's see here. So chat, give me the Helsley trade. Come on, Rangers. I would love to see that one for the Rangers. I just don't think it's going to happen. Not at this point in the offseason. Thank God it's Friday. No kidding. Today was insane at work, and it's going to be even more insane tomorrow. Let's see here. Yankees need a third baseman. I would agree there, and someone got DH since Big G going to be out a while. I would say so. Cubs got Tucker, but let's see how long. Again, if they're able to keep him long term, absolutely great trade. If it doesn't work out and they lose him in free agency, then they'll have to go out there and spend the money on another player of a comparable skill set. Otherwise, to me, it's a complete loss of a trade. But that's the risk you take when you take a trade for a guy that's an expiring deal that you could lose him for nothing in free agency. Master Midman Rafe has a quick fix. Get a small desktop fan, clip on, and point it at your desktop. That's true. That would work pretty good. Let's see here. Donnie, Judge is one of the best in the game. Yes, he is. Alrighty, let's get into one of the last topics I wanted to discuss before we head over to the 2025 season preview for the Cleveland Guardians, and that's the guys that are out of options. I saw this pop up on MLB Trade Rumors, and it just caught my eye earlier today. And this is where you're going to see a lot of movement at the end of spring training. Guys that might not make the roster for one club could be traded to another before they're lost for nothing when they DFA these guys. So Angels, they've got a few of those guys. Joe Adell, they're not going to DFA him. Brock Burke, probably going to make the roster. Mickey Moniak going to make the roster there as well. A couple of relief pitchers there as well. Astros, Brian Abreu, easy lock for the roster. The only ones that might be a little bit of a risk to not make this roster, John Singleton and Taylor Trammell. They need some outfielders, so I'll be curious to see if they hold on to Trammell just out of pure need. And then Forrest Whitley, they need to keep him on this roster at the major league level, and they're going to have a need in that starting rotation. And he's acquitted himself decently so far in spring training. He's going to have to keep that trend going there. Let's see here. Blue Jays, a couple of guys that could find their way on the outside looking in by the end of spring training. Zach Pop is one of those guys. Braves, Nick Allen. They brought in Jurickson Profar, but I think Nick Allen's going to be a nice piece for them. Ian Anderson, Grant Holmes are both going to be in the starting rotation if I had to guess. Thromp is a guy that might be on the outside looking in because they've got a couple of good veteran catchers in the minor leagues with them as well. Eli White probably will be headed towards DFA status if I am guessing the Braves lineup accurately. Brewers, Eric Haas could be the one that could be on the outside looking in based off of some of the veteran help that they have in the minors as well. Joel Payamps, I don't think he's anywhere near going to be out of option or going to be towards the DFA ramp here. Jojo Romero possibly as a relief pitcher here, but I think they're going to hold on to him. Let's see here. Cubs. Brujan is one, but they just traded for him. I'm not sure they would move him right after getting him. Pavin Smith, I think he's locked himself up a nice spot on this roster. One of the two catchers, I'd say, gets DFA'd by the Diamondbacks. Banda could be the odd man out there with the Dodgers. I think Evan Phillips is pretty well locked in. Giants, Sam Huff, we already saw him get designated for assignment earlier by the Texas Rangers. He is now in that same position here with the San Francisco Giants. And I think he's got a good chance here to crack that opening day roster because of his performance so far this spring. Ramos, of course, is going to stay. Guardians, the team we're going to cover today. McKenzie's going to stay. Lively's going to stay. Hinches could be one of the ones, but I don't think they're going to let him go for nothing there. Mariners, they've got so many relief pitchers, they're probably going to have to trade one or two of these guys. Spire, of course, could start the season on the injured list, but maybe Vargas or Bizardo, depending on the offers that you get. Let's see here. Marlins, Edward Cabrera. I think that's a good trade option. They're not going to let him go for nothing. Seth Martinez is currently in DFA limbo, of course. Jesus Sanchez there. Tinoco, I think, is had a really good arm for them in the second half last year. I think he'll make the roster this year as long as he continues to pitch well in spring training. Mets, mostly the relief pitchers are the ones that stick out to me. Young, Reed Foley, Buto, one of those guys I think probably heads towards DFA. Tyrone Taylor could be on the outside looking in. Canario could be on the outside looking in. Vientos, I think, has locked up a spot along with Siri. Nationals, Keeber Ruiz has never really latched on or paid dividends to the level we expected for him. So, but I think he's still one of the better options they have at catcher. Riley Adams, however, might be on the outside looking in. Orioles, a bunch of relief pitchers that could be on the outside looking in there. Nobody of real significance as far as I'm concerned. Phillies, Sosa, as far as an infielder, could be an interesting name to watch. Good defender, formerly of the St. Louis Cardinals, could be on the outside looking in there. Pirates, Joey Bart, depending on what they decide to do at catcher, could be an interesting name to watch. But I think he's going to make the opening day roster. Of course, they're going to keep O'Neill Cruz. Bailey Falter, not going to go anywhere. Dennis Santana, that's their current setup guy. I don't think he goes anywhere. Joey Wentz has seen his name bounce around the league a few times now, but I think he's relatively safe. Rangers, Leody Taveras is the one name that kind of comes to mind here for me. Just kind of looking at his roster status here, kind of give you a preview of what the offseason preview show is going to be for the Texas Rangers. Leody Taveras is a guy that, while he's out of options, really has only one way to make this roster, and that's as the starting center fielder or the fourth outfielder. And because they struggle to hit left-handed pitching, maybe they'll bring in Kevin Pillar, who they just signed to a minor league deal, onto the major league roster, which means one of those outfielders is going to be on the outside looking in, and I don't think they're going to keep Leody Taveras if he's not playing every day through the entirety of this season and into next. Remember, that number only goes up through arbitration next year as well. Jacob Webb is going to make this roster. Spores is in the IL. He will make the roster as well. Rays. Rotvelt could be on the outside looking in, kind of their backup catcher. Morel, I think, will make it. Everybody else there doesn't really interest me as far as a DFA opportunity. Rockies. Nolan Jones, of course, is going to be their, they're going to hope for the best for him. Estrada, they're going to keep. Herget could be on the outside looking in. Depends on what they decide to do with that bullpen. And Sam Hilliard, I think he's going to be used more a platoon guy this year, unless they get some really surprising results out of spring training from a few of their younger players. Royals, Nick Prado comes to mind as a guy that could be on the outside looking in of a roster spot here. But I think he has a chance to, because of the flexibility he has with playing a couple of different positions, he might be able to latch on and stay for a little while longer. Let's see here. Twins, couple relief pitchers, nothing that moves the needle for me. White Sox, Matt Thaiss, could be a nice backup catcher for somebody. Bryce Wilson, another relief pitcher, starter, combo guy. Tauchman has had his nice day in the sun a few different times in his career. Nobody that really moves the needle for me either. And then you get to the New York Yankees. Leiter's not going anywhere. Peraza's not going anywhere. And then Gomez, we'll see. All right. But that's kind of your out of options guys that are going to see a lot of trade activity. The one that I think is probably the biggest name that could be moved is Leody Taveras on the screen. If a team is willing to offer up a lower end closer, I think that trade would probably be made right now. It would save the Rangers a little bit of money and allow them to spend that money either on a relief pitcher with closing abilities, or to get another innings eater, or just pocket the money so that when they get to the deadline, they can utilize that salary space there and bring in somebody else at that point as well. But a lot of irons in the fire as we get closer and closer to opening day, and we'll have to see how these rosters ultimately shake out. All right, let's see here. I'm going to buy one point. Okay. What happens when I buy a junk from overseas? Yes. Angels have to eat the Rendon contract. They do. Angels will also have to eat the Trouts contract as well. Yes, they will. Rafe, why did we DFA Huff with the uncertainty in Heim? Worst case, we would have had him start and Huff a chance to back up. If he does bad, then just bring in someone, or Higgy start. Yeah. The reason why they DFA'd him is because for one reason or another, the front office, the GM, the manager all didn't believe in Sam Huff. They wouldn't give him time at the major leagues anytime they called him up. And so he needed more time at the plate in the big leagues rather than one at bat once a week and say, hey, there you go get him, slugger, and just hope for the best. That's not going to do well for anybody's development. And the Rangers really just poorly handled him at the major league level. I'm excited to see what he does for the San Francisco Giants. I think he has a real chance to make the roster out there. But as to your question as far as why they chose to DFA him instead of trying to give him a chance in spring training to earn that role, it's because they wanted to go with the two-catcher system here with Higgy and with Heim. They didn't want to have another third catcher like this hanging around because, again, he's out of options. There was no reason to keep him in the minor leagues at this point because, again, he's out of options. So, the Rangers really had to come to a decision on Sam Huff, and they chose to make other roster decisions to make the. I can't remember how early in the offseason he was DFA'd, but I believe one of the relievers they brought in was the reason why they ultimately DFA'd him, because he was one of the back of the 40-man roster guys that they could afford to lose. Tells you where the state of this roster is as they've continued to add pieces to this bullpen. Are any of these pieces to the bullpen that they've added anyone that I would consider lights out? No. Are they anyone that I would consider as a best bullpen arm of the year type of guy? No. I would say that the bullpen that they got is a lot more experienced, has a lot of variance in performance, and just like all other bullpens, unless you're one of the top 5, 10 relief pitchers in the game, you're going to have one year that's great and another year that's not so great, and then you're going to have a year that's and then you're going to go back to being good again. It's just the way things work in the bullpen. So the Rangers are taking a lot of lottery tickets and hoping a few of them cash. Not a bad way to go, but again, they're still looking for more of a lockdown closer right now. I thought that guy should have been and would have been Kirby Yates if he did not decide to go to the Los Angeles Dodgers instead. But to answer your question, Huff just didn't have any believers in that clubhouse anymore, and so it was just time for the organization to move on. And they did end up sending him on his way to the San Francisco Giants. Alrighty, Mets got Soto, so they don't care. True. Let's see here. Baltimore going to take a loss with Burns gone. They are. I think they're going to be still a very good team in the regular season, but I have my doubts as far as how good they'll be in the postseason. I still think they'll add a number 1 type starter at some point. There are rumors today about them, trying to convert Roansy Contreras to a starter this year. I'm not sure how prevalent that is for a realistic option, but I think he's going to be at least a multi-inning reliever for them this year. Willard, welcome back. Appreciate you joining us. You think the Astros will have a better bullpen with Forrest Whitley? I think he's going to be on that Major League roster one way or the other for you, Willard. So, whether that's as a starter or as a reliever, I think they're going to have to keep him there and just hope for the best at this point. And I hope him all the best. I hope he does succeed there for you guys in Houston. All right, let's get to the 2025 season preview for the Cleveland Guardians. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. And so without further ado, here's the 2025 preview for the Cleveland Guardians. Welcome to the 2025 season preview for the Cleveland Guardians. My name is Michael here at the Upside Sports Network. Appreciate you guys joining us. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe to be notified whenever we do go live. We'll be live every single evening, bringing you the latest from around the league, letting you know the latest rumors, headlines, injury statuses, what your lineup's going to look like, your rotation, bullpen, what your prospects are doing. All of the news that you could possibly hope for from Major League Baseball, we will have it right here. So be sure to hit that like and subscribe. Follow us on X at UpsideSN and on Facebook at Upside Sports Network. Now, the Cleveland Guardians really surprised a lot of us last year with how dominant they really were. They finished the season as the winner in the AL Central. We'll check in on their record here in just a moment. But this is a team that really overachieved. Now, of course, they certainly have had their ups and downs this offseason. Down, of course, losing Naylor. He goes in the trade to the Diamondbacks as they kind of get some future assets there. However, a familiar face is back for the Guardians with Carlos Santana taking over that spot. Now, of course, they made a couple of different trades, saving themselves some money. Thankfully for them, the Toronto Blue Jays were there to take away that bad contract in Jimenez's deal, and they were able to parlay that into a Horowitz and a prospect. They flipped Horowitz to get another starting pitcher in there. They have had some up and down performances in that starting staff the last couple of years, and a lot of injuries there, which is why they wanted to get another arm. Good on them for kind of getting themselves some additional firepower for that rotation. And, by the way, they added some arms to that bullpen as well. This is a team that's ready to try to compete once again in the AL Central, so let's look and see where they finished the 2024 season. Now, looking at the standings, they finished last year 92-69, well above what anybody, I think, expected for them. I think reasonable expectations were between 84 and 87. They clearly outdid that pace there. Second place in the division went to the Kansas City Royals, 86 wins. Tigers tied them at 86 wins. Twins at 82. That's 4 teams over 500 there in an AL Central that was very competitive last year, and it's only gotten more competitive this year. Guardians kind of retooled their roster a little bit. Royals added Jonathan India and a good bullpen arm or two. Tigers, they did a little bit of everything this offseason, including bringing back Jack Flaherty. They were in there for Alex Bregman and were unable to get that one done. But overall, I'd say the Tigers are in a better place than where they finished last year as well. But looking at where this team finished, 92 wins, that's a lofty goal for them to reach this year. Let's go ahead and check out their roster and see if they can actually do it once again. All right, so the Guardians, according to Fangraphs, are going to have a lineup that looks like this. Kwan in left, Manzardo in a platoon at DH. They have Noel on the bench, Arias and Rodriguez, all of which could be platoon options there. Jose Ramirez, of course, one of the best team-friendly deals in the business at third base, hitting third switch hitter there. And the return at first base for Carlos Santana, taking the spot there of Naylor. Center, they have Lane Thomas hitting fifth, Will Brennan in a platoon out there in right field, Juan Brito at second, taking over for Jimenez, Chris Jimenez anyway. And then catcher Bo Naylor is there hitting eighth, and then ninth is Brian Rocchio. Overall, this lineup to me is thin, I guess we could call it, with the loss of Naylor there. They really don't have that same power punch. I would say they have some really good contact guys at the top. I love Ramirez, of course, professional player. Kwan, a really good contact hitter. Looking at the WAR, though, for these players, they're expecting Jose Ramirez to be around a 6. Sounds about right, maybe even higher in my opinion, though. And then you look at Stephen Kwan around 4. The rest of the lineup, I guess we're counting on defense at catcher and shortstop for why the other two guys there are above a 2 WAR. But other than that, not a whole lot of success here offensively. Looking at the weighted runs created plus, they have, 3 guys that are significantly above Manzardo, Kwan, and Ramirez. Outside of that, usually around 100 is league average, or 100 is league average, and they have a bunch of guys around that number there, both in the lineup and on the bench. Not a lot to look forward to there if you're a Guardians fan. So you're going to have to be driven a lot by the top of this order. And remember, they were supposed to go out there and make a big stab to try to go all in on 2025. They were the first team to really say they were going to go all in. And ultimately, I think they were the one team that really didn't, that said they were going to. I'd like the move that they made, sure, as far as an asset management type of thing with the Naylor trade and bringing in Carlos Santana. However, the trade-off that you're making there is the decrease in offense, the pickup in defense. You're hoping that the two kind of equal out. But when your offense doesn't have the other cogs in it to kind of pick up the slack for what Naylor brought you, that might really end up backfiring. So the one thing I worry about with this team more than any other is I look at the 107 win team for the San Francisco Giants early on in the Farhan Zaidi era. That was a team that I thought was a real fluky team. They had really great success that year and then immediately plummeted and weren't able to ever reestablish that height of that franchise. And I think the Guardians are a team that's susceptible to something like that this year. A team that was a division winner, ultimately falling flat on its face because they don't have as much production in that lineup as they originally thought they did. Now, the reason why you might think that they have a good chance is because usually their pitching staff is very good. So let's look at the bench first, and then we'll get into the rotation. Austin Hedges, the reason why he still has a job in Major League Baseball is because he is one of the best, if not the absolute best, defensive catchers in the game. That's why he has a role on this team. And then, of course, you get 3 platoon guys, Noel, Arias, and Rodriguez to round out this bench. Nobody expected close to a 1 WAR out of that bench. Tells me that this offense could face some serious struggles as the year goes along. For the rotation, Tanner Bybee, Ben Lively, Gavin Williams is now back in that rotation in that number 3 spot. Luis Ortiz, the trade that they made for Jimenez, ultimately resulted them in a roundabout way of getting Luis Ortiz, and then Tristan McKenzie in that 5 hole. So overall, a really good rotation. But again, you look at the wins above replacement, I will say that Fangraphs is very, very low on what they expect from the Guardians this year. Bybee's the only one over a 2. Gavin Williams at a 1.5. The rest of the guys are beneath a 1. Tells you that the Fangraphs really doesn't believe in this rotation a lot. I will say that this rotation has still got enough pieces in it to be very competitive, but does competitive translate to wins? That's the bigger question there. I think best you can hope for in a competitive situation is 50-50 at best, and when your offense is already behind the 8 ball, for your rotation to be a little bit iffy for me, while it's still been the strongest part of this team, isn't to the level of the Mariners, isn't to the level of the Yankees right now, isn't to the level of a healthy Rangers or Astros to me. I think that they've fallen behind the eight ball here with the overall roster. I still think they're going to be a very good team. I still think they'll compete in the AL Central. I just think that they have a lot less to work with than what they've had before. Looking at their bullpen, Emmanuel Clase really is the biggest reason for their success last year, being able to lock those games down, and of course having a great bullpen in front of him as well. Cade Smith, really unheralded, one of the best relievers in the game. 1.5 WAR for him. For a setup guy, that's almost unheard of for that level of WAR from a setup guy. Hunter Gaddis, Paul Sewell, the former closer there, now in a middle of the bullpen type of a guy. Tim Herron, Andrew Walters, Eric Sabrowski, and one of my favorite signings of the offseason, Jacob Junis, a good multi-inning reliever or a spot starter when necessary. I think he's a really nice signing for them. And then, of course, you look at their injuries. David Fry is going to miss a little bit of time after having off-season elbow surgery. Shane Bieber is working his way back from a Tommy John. I would expect him somewhere close to the All-Star break. John Means, I think, is more of a lottery ticket for 26 than it is for 25. But at best, you might get him throwing again and in the majors by September. And then, of course, on the relief pitching side, Trevor Stephan had UCL surgery in March last year. He'll be back somewhere before the All-Star break. But again, you don't want to rush him. Another really good high-end relief option there as well. Rafe, is Framber a Ranger at this time next year? I would say no. I think the Rangers really do like pitching, but I don't think they necessarily like the pitching Framber Valdez does. He's more of an emotional pitcher. I think if they're going to add some starting pitching, which I do believe they will, they're going to go with somebody with a strong track record of success, consistency, and that's where they're going to spend their money if they go for one of the top-end starting pitchers next offseason. Willard, plus the Astros have some players who will be sleepers, especially with Walker being the answer for Dodgers pitching. I will say for the Astros fans, you're going to be really excited for what Christian Walker brings you at first base. You literally have had a black hole over there at first base for the last 3 or 4 years, and it's very nice to see them get one of the best, if not the absolute best, defensive first baseman in the game, but also a very good offensive player as well, who's rounding into form and hitting for more power as of late. Rafe Hodges, just the GOAT. He is the GOAT. He's a lot of fun. If you guys ever catch any of his interviews, they're always fantastic. Rafe, I've heard Cease and Framber to Texas, so I thought I'd ask. I've heard both as well. Cease is more of a trade guy. Framber, I haven't heard too much outside of the possibility of signing in free agency. I just don't believe there's any truth to that one for Framber Valdez. I think they would go other directions for a starting pitcher. As far as Dylan Cease, to me, I would want to avoid him because, again, I want a stronger track record of success. The front office in Texas, though, has reached out to the San Diego Padres about his availability much earlier in the offseason. They haven't done it recently, so don't take it as, hey, they're talking about adding Dylan Cease. Click my YouTube video and add it to your short on TikTok or whatever. No. It's not anything recent. The Rangers are just kind of gearing up for free agency in 2026, I believe, with the conversations they had around Dylan Cease, just to kind of kick the tires and see what the availability was. If they could catch an opportunity, sure, they would do it. But outside of that, they weren't going to mortgage the future to bring in a starting pitcher as good as he is when he's right, that could mortgage their future there. But let's go ahead and kind of finish out this thing for the Guardians as far as their roster itself. Their minor leagues, not much at the catcher spot there. First base, not much their depth. Travis Bazzana, of course, their top prospect. They're expecting him to play the majority of the season at Double-A. But again, look at Fangraphs. They're having 154 plate appearances for Travis Bazzana. Maybe he could be a late August, September call-up, I suppose. And that's what they're factoring in here. But for me, I think Travis Bazzana needs to stay in the minors and really get some great seasoning down there and really be ready to take the league by storm in 26 and not rush into the big leagues just to get a taste at the end of the year. I think you need to do what's best for his development, whatever that is, and rushing him is not the way to do it. As far as third baseman, nobody there to really write home about. Shortstop, Will Wilson, not much there. Outfielders, a couple of top prospects. One formerly the Miami Marlins, Khalil Watson, was once the 16th pick in the draft for the Miami Marlins. They acquired him in a trade a couple of years back, and then chased a lot, or one of their own draft picks from a year later, for-round run, pick number 16. Two really nice pieces in the outfield, but again, not expecting much out of those guys as well. Starting pitching depth, Logan Allen, Kobe Allard, Vince Velasquez, Zach Kent, Ryan Webb, just some names that might catch your eye there. They do have plenty of good depth coming. Slade Ciccione as well. And then going on to the relief pitchers, this is a bullpen that's going to have plenty of talent already at the major league level. They don't really need the depth that they have at the minors, but they have a bevy of good arms there as well. Riley Pine, Tanner Burns, couple of names that might ring a bell. Luis Frias, and let's see here. Andrew Mazeroski, not sure if I'm pronouncing that one right, but overall I'd say their bullpen is in good shape going into the 2025 season. Let's see here. Rafe, what's the deal with David Fry? Like, is he someone who they will try to re-sign or trade off? First, they just got to get him healthy. So, just kind of show you where he's at. Let me scroll back up here. Of course, he's injured right now, off-season elbow surgery. Not sure how much they're going to get out of him, but he's still a very young player. Still has 3 options left on his deal. I say a young player, an inexperienced player at the big league level. He's still 29 years old, though. So you got plenty of time left with him. So I don't think he's going to be traded or sent anywhere else, if that answers your question there. Let's see here. Let's go ahead and look at the prospects for the Guardians. Again, their top 100 guys that they have. Travis Bazzana. I think he was the first pick, if I remember correctly. Yep. Round 1, pick 1 last year. And then of Chase DeLauder, Jason Churio, and Angel Genayo, not sure if I'm pronouncing that one right, but again, positional prospects here. Tells me that the Guardians have kind of had a institutional change as far as the way they're going about developing talent, that they've realized they've really kind of perfected what they're doing from a pitching perspective, that they're going to try to spend a little bit more of that prospect capital, those draft picks, on bringing in some offensive talent, and that's what you're seeing the fruits of that labor. The question I have is how quickly does that pitching start to fall off with their change in dynamic there in Cleveland, but they really do need offense more than anything else, so I understand the reasoning behind the decision. But it is a risk, especially when you're known as a team that really does a great job developing pitching to kind of steer your club away from that and into more of a positional player way of doing things. Now, sure, your offense will be better. Sure, it's easier to get those guys to the big league level and have them produce, but if you get one of those pitchers to really pay off, he's a real asset. So, for instance, say Tristan McKenzie at the height of his powers, was traded only a year into his big league career, he would have commanded a massive haul in free agents or in a trade. Not saying that these guys couldn't, but it's a lot harder to develop starting pitching than it is any position player. And so, just kind of something to kind of keep in mind as we go through the 25 season and into 26-27 is how that development is changing there for the Cleveland Guardians. Looking at their payroll. This is a team that is notoriously unwilling to spend at the top of the market, but they got a great team-friendly deal there in Jose Ramirez. 19 this year, 21 next, 23 the following, and then 25 and 28. Overall, just a great contract. Shane Bieber is signed for this year and does have a player option anyway for 26. Carlos Santana signed a 1-year deal and then he'll be a free agent at the end of the year. Paul Sewald, 1 year with a mutual option. Jacob Junis, a 1-year deal. And then, of course, you have your arbitration guys and those kind of things. But looking at their payroll from last year, they finished with 104. They're expected to finish with 100 this year. Their luxury tax commitments, anyway, take that salaries up to 122. That's about the peak of what I expect them to spend. Now, as far as the rest of the years, look how quickly that drops off. 48 next year, 45 the following, and so forth and so on. But if you look at it, that still doesn't include arbitration for these guys. So go ahead and plug in an extra $20 to $25 million in 26, and that'll take you up to about 70, almost $75 million that they'll be spending. They could still add a couple of pieces next year, but they're never going to be players for guys like Vlad Guerrero Jr. or Kyle Tucker in the free agency market. Trade, maybe. Free agency, not a chance. And so I think they'll split it between a couple of different players to kind of solidify their team for the 26 season. But going into 25, I think they're pretty close to the max budget that they would prefer to spend unless an opportunity arises to their liking. So overall, their financial future looks really clean, especially after they got rid of the contracts of Miles Straw and Jimenez to the Toronto Blue Jays as well. As far as wins of the offseason for me, looking at this, the bullpen, and I just really like what they did back here, bringing in a Paul Sewald, kind of solidifying it with Jacob Junis, and helping out that rotation. You look at the lineup to me, I like the addition from a defensive standpoint for Carlos Santana, but on the flip side of that, a mistake or a miss for the offseason is losing the offensive potential that Naylor brings you. and I think that's really going to hurt as the year goes along. They're not going to have that same punch in there. Carlos Santana, for as much as he, as a downgrade offensively, is equally every bit of that defensively. But again, if you can't hit the ball, you can't win a game going zero, or you can't win a game that is scoreless tie. Somebody's going to have to come out on top and score some runs, and I'm not sure the Guardians have enough run support here to really be a consistent enough team offensively to be competitive. And so I think they're probably in danger of falling behind here. But let's look and see, what we could do to kind of solve this problem. The biggest hole for me is in that lineup. So they could use anybody from an outfielder. They could use somebody up the middle. I don't think they're going to try to block Travis Bazzana, but maybe a second baseman there. But remember, they're trying to do it on a shoestring budget. So when we go to the trade machine here, we go to baseball trade values here. Let me refresh this page real quick. Get rid of these ads on this page for you guys. See if it worked or if I need to do it a different way again. So far, so good. All right, so we're going to do the Guardians. And again, we're looking for some low-cost, inexpensive bats or some bats with some control. And so one place that I'm going to go to first is the Texas Rangers. The one team I told you had some out-of-options guys like Leody Taveras. That's where we're going to go here to help out this outfield. So let's say that they're looking to bring in some bats from Texas, kind of clear off the roster jam here for Texas. And the one advantage that they do have in Cleveland is that bullpen. So kind of keep that in mind as well. So the one piece I'm going to trade here first is going to be Leody Taveras. If I can find him here. Maybe I'm blind. They've got his value all the way down to 2.8. He's got 3 years of control as well. Finances might get a little bit more expensive for them as they go along. He's already at 4.8. That could jump to 8 next year and then up to 11 or 12 the year after that. Might be a little bit rich for what the Guardians are hoping for. The second player I'm going to throw in here is Ezekiel Duran. He has really high value as far as a bat goes, but he has to live up to it. He's got to get to that level and stay at that level and be productive at that level. That's why his value is so depressed, because he didn't have as much opportunity last year, and when he did get those opportunities, he really struggled. Meanwhile, Josh Smith was kind of in the same spot last year as far as value and took off. In the first half, he was probably the MVP for the Texas Rangers for what he was able to do offensively. Second half, he really regressed, and I'm hoping an offseason kind of got his bat right again. I think he just got fatigued in the second half. Part of the reason why we saw him really drop off. But if you're the Guardians and you're looking for a couple of nice pieces to help improve your offense, I would like both of those. You give everyday playing time to Ezekiel Duran either at second or third. I think it'd be a great option. And then Taveras, of course, slides into your outfield. Where would you put him? I'd probably put him in center, and I'd move Lane Thomas over to right or something along those lines. And then I'd put Leody down at the bottom in this lineup. And then I'd probably put Ezekiel Duran probably playing second base over Juan Brito and just see what you have there. But again, they're expecting him to start the season, or Juan Brito to be one of their top prospects anyway to start the season there. But I think he's number 7 in their organization, according to Fangraphs. But let's go back to the trade here. What would the Rangers want in return? I think they would want either A, flexibility from just a roster construction standpoint, or some bullpen arms. So we're going to go first and look at the bullpen and just see what they could move. Value we're looking for is around a 7, so it ain't going to be anything crazy. We're not going to get Emmanuel Clase or anything like that. But an injured guy like Trevor Stefan could be in the works there. Seawald, as far as a past closer, could be in the works there. Cade Smith has really nice value, but again, way more than what the Texas Rangers would be able to acquire. And so I really don't see a perfect fit here that would go for Texas on the relief side of things. So let's go back to the roster here. We're going to go back all the way. Scroll down here. Cicioni, a pitcher, maybe. They have some compensation picks that would be interesting. There it is. Comp round B. And then I would like to see Jacob Junis kind of help out the Rangers. But let's go ahead and throw him in this deal. And you get another comp pick here as well. And then let's see what this trade looks like. Would I do this trade if I'm Texas? Probably. I probably would do that trade. I might try to finish out this deal and get one more piece in return, just a low-level piece. We're talking like really low value, really young player probably. 19-year-old starting pitching prospect maybe. Let's go a little bit better though. Just a little. 20-year-old catcher, they could use some catching prospects. Chase Mobley, that's a little high. Let's go with Robert Lopez. Validate the trade, fair trade, post it. So there's one way the Guardians could get a couple of bats into their lineup. Duran, I think, really fits the prototypical bat that they're looking for with control. Leody Taveras gives them a great defensive center fielder, a lot like what they had in Miles Straw, but a little bit better offensive game if he's able to reach that potential once again. He's a year removed from being a very nice piece. Part of the reason why Texas was one of the best offenses in 23 was because of these two players and getting them for the Cleveland Guardians this year to kind of help beef up that outfield and that second base spot, I think is a really nice value piece for them. You're giving up a couple of competitive balance picks, but those are going to be in the 70s or so, 70s or 90s, somewhere in there if I remember correctly. I want to say 70s. Jacob Junis goes into the bullpen right now for Texas and helps them out. Also helps them out from a starting pitching standpoint if they have injuries as well. Kind of fits that Dane Dunning mold for me for what Texas would get in Junis. And then, of course, a lottery ticket at catcher. I would do that deal for both sides. Now, let's go ahead and do another trade here. Let's say they're looking for another team that could give them some controllable assets, but they don't want to give up as much. They want to go a little bit cheaper here. So the Guardians, let's go ahead and do another team that could sell a piece or two. Cardinals, maybe, but probably not. Mets, maybe, probably not. No, nothing there. Let me look at the Red Sox. Let me look at the Majors roster here. And we're looking for a lower cost piece from an offense. Oh, we're on the Guardian side of things, my bad. Majors. Bregman, Devers, Vaughn Grissom would be a nice piece there. It's a nice one to keep an eye on. Let's go back to the all. And again, we're looking for a low-cost option to help improve the offense there for Cleveland. So who would help out and help make a difference? Ref Snyder, I think, would be a good platoon player for them. Probably not going to go that direction, though. Vaughn Grissom could be a nice piece for them as kind of a short-term option. I don't think that really fits either. Let's go to page 2 real quick. Nobody else really fits the bill from what I'm looking at here. A lot of pitchers that could fit, but not enough hitting. Let's go to the Angels. Angels have a bunch of major league offensive talent that's easily traded. Let's go to page 1. Let's see here. Jorge Soler could be a nice bat for them. Say they get them to buy down or pay a little bit of that deal. That would make sense for the Guardians to try to bring in as their DH. That's one name to keep an eye on. Let's see here. Who else would be a nice piece for them? Moniak would be an interesting one. Adele, I don't think he has enough value for them. Rengifo could be a really good utility player for them. Taylor Ward in the outfield, but a little bit too much value there. Maybe go for one of those pieces. Let's go to a different ball club. Let's go with... Let's go with Baltimore. Just want to look and see what's available here more than anything else. Low-cost option that would help them out offensively. Ryan O'Hearn would be a nice piece. Low-cost option. If they get squeezed from a roster standpoint and they want one of the other outfielders, maybe O'Hearn could go the other way. Help them out at first or in the outfield or a DH spot for them. Give them a little bit more power. In fact, I kind of like the power option there. Mountcastle could go as well, but I think they would prefer to hold on to him and rather trade O'Hearn. Laureano for an outfielder, maybe. But I think O'Hearn would probably be the nice piece that I would want, give you some power. Especially if one of the other outfielders there with Baltimore earns a roster spot. So say you bring in O'Hearn, you're getting some nice power. It's only going to cost you around 3. So maybe you trade a Michael Kennedy, a 19-year-old starting pitcher prospect. Gets you really close. And then let's go to page 3 here. We'll throw in another backup catcher like we were just talking about with the Rangers. And there's your deal. Let's validate it, post it. And there would be another nice trade to help improve the offense there for the Guardians. Not a bad deal overall. I probably would do the one for Texas first over this one, but I would see if I could swing this one in addition to it to kind of really, give myself some power in this lineup, because I think they really need power more than anything else to go with it. But Duran does bring you a nice bit of power. Tavares, when he's hitting, does bring power as well. All right, as far as where this team ultimately finishes, again, I think they're going to have a little bit of a come down from where they were last year. So again, 92 wins last year. I'm going to say they lose the division. I don't think they win it. I think the Royals are better. I think the Tigers are better. I think the Guardians are still a step above the Twins, but only barely because of the starting pitching there. But I think the Twins are going to sell at the deadline. With that said, I don't think the Guardians will be selling at the deadline. So I'm going to say they're going to be right in that 86 win range. They're going to be right on the cusp of making the wild card. Just kind of running through the teams in my head as far as who makes it. Say we get one of the Royals or Tigers that win the division. One of the Royals or Tigers finishes above the Guardians. That's one of the wild card spots. I think the Yankees, the Orioles, and the Red Sox are all better than the Guardians, but because they're in a strong division, their record might be not quite as good as I would expect them to be, even though I consider them better teams. I think Texas is going to win the AL West, but I think Houston's going to be very close. So I'll say the Houston Astros get one of those wild card spots. So that means we're basically going to have one of the Yankees or Red Sox getting one of the wild card spots, one of the Rangers or Astros getting the other wild card spot, and then you have all the rest of the teams fighting for that final spot. Orioles, Mariners, Guardians, Twins to some extent. I think if the Orioles add a ace to their staff, they probably get that final wild card spot. Tigers, I think, did enough for the pitching staff, but I think offensively they're going to regret not getting Alex Bregman. I think I'm leaning towards the Guardians being on the outside of the playoff picture looking in. I just don't think they did enough to solve their offensive issues, and I think their pitching might finally catch up to them now that's starting to come back to the pack a little bit here. So I'll still say they're above 500 team. I'll go ahead and give them 80. I'll give them 85 wins and say they miss out on the AL wildcard by a game or 2. So overall, still a good season for them, but certainly a lot like what we saw with the San Francisco Giants, where it was a little bit of fool's gold with what they did last year. I think having a rookie manager kind of play or perform so well above expectations, having this lineup really produce in ways that it really hadn't in years anyway, and now you decimate the offense a little bit by taking away Naylor. And didn't really replace that power in that lineup. I know you still have you brought in Carlos Santana, which really does help you from a defensive standpoint, but is nowhere near the offensive player Naylor was, and I think they'll miss that from their perspective. As far as expectations for the roster, I think we could see some really nice years out of the top 3 there, Ramirez, Manzardo, and Kwan. I think Santana is going to be a nice welcome sight to the fans, be a fan favorite once again. Bo Naylor could take a step as a catcher there. He's only been in the MLB for a year and change now at this point. I think that could be one of your growth spots there. But overall, do I think this is going to be a team that's going to be selling at the deadline? Probably not. They might sell a veteran or 2 here or there, but nobody that's going to be locked down to long-term future contracts if they can help it. But or if a crazy trade offer comes their way. But I think next year, the 26th season, will be all about Travis Bazzana and getting him acquainted with the MLB level of game and getting him to be that next superstar for the Cleveland Guardians. But as far as big trades, I don't think they'll be in there for Vladdy. I don't think they'll be in there for Tucker. I know they were in there for trades for Kyle Tucker, but I don't think that's going to happen at the deadline this year. I just think that the time has come and gone for them to really be that all-in team this year. And while I'm sure they're still going to try to, compete and win the division once again, I just think they fall a little bit short here based off of pure talent. As far as grade, I'm going to give them. I'll give them a B plus for what the Guardians did. I think the reason why it's not higher is because they didn't bring in enough power to replace Naylor in this lineup. I do like what they have from a pitching standpoint, and they're going to have more coming back from the injured list as the year goes along. Can't count on it, of course, but I think they'll have at least a couple of decent reinforcements that stay healthy. With that being said, I still think that this Guardians team does not have enough from an offensive perspective, especially with the departure of Naylor, to really overcome some of the issues that they're going to have from a roster construction standpoint. I think the rotation certainly has some really good names there, but hopefully you have better than just names that are in that rotation. You get performance out of them, and according to Fangraphs, they're really low on their expectations for both the lineup and what this rotation is going to be able to do this year. And I'm not quite as far as they are. I think they have them really low, maybe even below the Twins as far as their own expectations. But for me, I would like to see that. I picture them a little bit above the Twins because I think the Twins are going to be a hot mess, would be a nice way to put it, as we get close to the All-Star break. As far as growth and surprises, obviously we could get a nice debut season from Bazana in the second half, and maybe he is the spark plug that catapults them to being not just a wild card team, but really threatened for the division crown. With that being said, what is the ceiling for this ball club? I'd say the best case scenario is they finish exactly where they did last year, 82, maybe 83 wins, win the division, and then get bounced early in the playoffs once again when their offensive issues can become much more apparent. As far as the floor for this team, looking at the record from last year, they finished 92 wins. My prediction has them in that 85 win category. I'm going to say the floor for this team is probably a 78 win ball club, especially if that rotation really does struggle. It could go even worse. They just don't have the same talent that they used to, and I think they're trying to put things together offensively at the top and just hope for the best for some of the younger guys in the bottom half of the lineup. They've been trying at it and failing for years to do that same thing. We'll have to see how this iteration does for the Cleveland Guardians. Appreciate you guys joining us tonight. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe if you haven't already. We're going to do one more live kind of break down the 2025 season preview here for the Minnesota Twins in just a moment. So be sure to join us in just a moment for that one. But appreciate you guys joining us. Follow us on X at Upside Ascend and on Facebook at Upside Sports Network. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe, and we'll see you guys in just a moment.